Happy Friday, newsies! It is I, Becca Hector, your host of Neurodiversity Newsstand. Welcome to the next installment of Neurodiversity Newsstand, your neurodiversity news in a nutshell. That's where we're at. So welcome to the channel, you guys. It's another Friday in 2020, our second Friday in 2020. And we're back. We're back to kind of phasing into the news cycle and things like that. And I'm phasing into my new word and kind of transitioning into the newness of 2020 and kind of I don't know, just transitioning. And so as most transitions are, it's a pain in the butt a little bit. It kind of it works your brain a little bit. It changes things up for your kind of cycle and your routines a little bit, and it kind of uproots you a little bit. And so it's really funny to me that like the new year happens and people just flip. They do their resolution or they do whatever, and it's like, oh, it's 2020. And I'm the person that will now write 2019 on everything for the first month of 2020. It's a little bit harder for my brain to kind of phase into that and to kind of leave flourish behind and move on to flower and what flower means to me and all of those things. So this has been a kind of a mental exercise for me this week. It's been sort of refocusing myself and reprioritizing myself and what I kind of want out of 2020 and how I think I can get there. That's been a lot of this week. And so I've been committed to that piece of me that wants to do a little bit more selfish work, and I just now have to get off my butt and do it. And so, as many of you on the spectrum know, autistic inertia gets in the way of just about everything, and that's where I'm sitting. I'm having a little bit of it, and I think some of that came from just not feeling passionate about what I was working on and what I had to do to shift to make it something I can be passionate about rather. But I'm struggling today a little bit because I'm having a sensory day. So what I notice, and that's what I call them, I don't know what they or if they have a name or anything, but that's what I call them. So, like after I've had some stress or whatever, I notice that I have certain symptomology or certain traits that pop up from my autism under stress. And so one of those things is I struggle to eat. I start to get really turned off by many foods, many textures, many combinations, even some of my favorites. And I lose my appetite in terms of interoception, recognizing my hunger almost entirely. And so that's something that I've been struggling with this week. And it's like, man, I'm so tired. And part of being so tired is that I'm so hungry and not feeding my body. But I also am struggling with not forcing myself to eat because clearly my body needs some space or some kindness with what I'm choosing to put in it. So it's been that kind of week, and with those sensory disturbances and all of the stress and that kind of stuff, and when it kind of peaks up, and it can, because I haven't been under life stress, I've been under mental emotional stress that I'm kind of putting on myself, the work that I'm doing in there. And so, it was like, okay, let me not beat myself up for struggling about food and things like that, and see what I can do to kind of fix and change. And so I know for me, a lot of the ways that I get out of my inertia feelings and out of that stuff, and, is to kind of reignite my creative spirit and to try to remember that I need to make things. And if I make things, and if I'm doing things and creating things that I'm putting out into the world, that I can then open myself up to receiving more stuff, more information that I can then put back out there again. So the hope is to kind of open myself up a little. And I hope that making this video for you guys today will kind of open me up. I'm a little rambly, if you might notice. But what else? What else can I update you on? This week I went and got a haircut. I'll give you a hair update. How about that? So I went and I got a haircut. And if you haven't been watching the channel for a very long time, you may or may not know, a couple of months back, almost a year ago, you guys, it was last April, end of March, early April of last year, that I shaved the whole side of my head here in the back, underneath, and did like this cool undercut thing. And I did some crazy color styles with it as well, and that kind of thing. And then I decided this year, as part of my kind of, this is so weird, and I will explain why this is so weird in a second. Okay, so part of that desire for authenticity is sort of unmasking, the unmasking of myself. And that is, some of it is behavioral and the literal mask that we talk about often, but some of it were the little habits that I was doing and the things that I was doing to create that mask for people. So some of it was hiding behind coloring my hair, or that was the way I was expressing myself, and I'd been doing it for so long, I couldn't remember who I was underneath, and I couldn't literally remember what my hair color was anymore. So this year I decided to stop coloring my hair and to start growing out my natural hair, and doing the same thing with my nails, stop going to the nail place and do my nails myself, or just let them be natural. So it's been quite a journey. The nail journey is interesting. It's hard for me to deal with them, and they won't grow, and they're breaking and all kinds of other stuff. But I'm trying to learn to not get frustrated by it and how to handle it, and just know that they'll grow back. As for the hair, I went 8 weeks last haircut, 8 weeks before I went and got a haircut. So I am, if you can see, you guys, I went this last haircut. Oh, look, you can see it now, you guys, you can see it, not just on the sides, which I know you can see, but you can see the little stripey I have going on there. Okay, well, so when I first started growing out my hair, I was like, okay, please let me have a cool jean gray stripe in my hair somewhere. And I found it. I have one. I'm really excited. It's not amazing and huge, but it's really cool and fun. And as it's growing, it's still really literally there. So this haircut, I went and not only got a trim, but I changed my part. And that's why I'm struggling so much. So I'm used to my hair going this way, and now it goes this way. And it's really confusing because I've had my part in the same place for my whole life. I don't remember ever having my hair in a different, parted in a different place. So it's been interesting. Like, I want to fix it in the wrong direction all the time. So whatever. In any case, that's the hair update. Otherwise, I'm loving it. It's growing out. All of my layers are finally out. The sides have caught up almost entirely. And now my layers are gone, my natural hair is growing in, and I'm trying to ignore the dyed ends and go for some length now. So we'll see kind of if I like it long, or if I just end up cutting it back short again. I don't know, but I'm loving not dyeing it. I am loving not needing to go cover my roots every 4 to 6 weeks. Big win. Very excited about that. So that's my update on that. And I think with the hair update, I will move us to the news. Because that's why you guys are here. You don't really care about my hair, although I'm glad that you take the time to listen. I appreciate that. Okay, this week in news. Nothing spectacular, nothing amazing, but good articles for us to start talking about and sharing with each other, which we did. I'm going to start us off this week with a New York Times piece that came out that we all talked about a lot. And I saw the story and research actually shared multiple times across the internet, various sources, various different formations of it. But and this is the New York Times article, the one that I thought was the cleanest. Early treatment for autism is critical. So besides the fact that when the word treatment came out of my mouth, I wanted to, I don't know, get hives and skeeve myself and vomit all at the same time. But what they mean is early intervention for autism is critical as early as possible. So the report came out of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and it talks about the fact that early identification and early treatment or intervention for autism seems to give us the best outcome. And yes, we know that's true, and we're hearing it over and over again. And this piece was different from others in that they said that early treatment or early intervention should occur whether or not an official diagnosis has been made, but should begin even if there's a suspicion. And the reason that that's important is for all the kiddos out there. So we know that a bunch of kiddos out there will start to show traits, autistic traits, and they'll end up at a doctor, and the doctor will say, yes, well, we suspect that your child is on the autism spectrum, but we can't say yet because your child is 2 or your child is 1. And so what they end up doing is taking an on-the-fence diagnosis until that child is older and they can say definitively, yes, this child has autism, and give the formal diagnosis. And what this research is saying is, even if that doctor wants to take that extra few years to go ahead and make that decision, if your doctor suspects, get your kid into some early treatment. And what I think is a couple of things. We all had some big old discussions, and some of the points that came out were interesting. But what I think we all kind of agreed on was that it shouldn't just be these early diagnoses that get treatment, right? Or get intervention. And so what happens is for a lot of us adults who get a late diagnosis, once we finally get the diagnosis, the interventions aren't there. So they're not only not there for our autism and for any of the struggles that come along with it, but they're also, the supports aren't there for those of us who have to unpack the trauma of a lifetime without a diagnosis and without understanding their own brain. And so what we would love for it to say is that not only is early identification great, which we think it's great as early as possible, we would love to see it, but also at the time of diagnosis, whenever it occurs, right, because it happens for all of us across the lifespan, we know, whenever it occurs, is to have that intervention, that treatment, right, available and on board. And that's really the part that matters. But what I love seeing is that they're finally letting these poor parents off the hook who have to sit there dangled on a hook wondering whether their kid will get supports or not until the doctor feels they're ready to give the formal diagnosis. So I thought that part of it was really great, but an interesting article to have come out, and it definitely sparked conversations with us, definitely got a lot of attention across the internet. So an important one to read, and it will, as will all the news pieces I talk about today, be in the description at the end of this video. Next article came out in Psychology Today, and it was called "When a Late Diagnosis of Autism is Life-Changing." When, I think all late in life diagnoses are life-changing, but when, yes. It is life-changing for sure. And this piece was great because it talked about the kind of baggage that non-diagnosed autistics carry through lifetime until they're diagnosed, and how hard it is to let go of some of that negative self-talk that you've built up over the years. So the author talks a lot about how autistics that aren't diagnosed until late in life heard many times in their childhood that they were difficult. And that the word difficult was a label that they started to wear. For me, that rang true so much. I can't even tell you how often I was told how difficult I was. And as an adult, when you carry that word difficult with you, you kind of think, are you worth loving? Are you worth caring about? Are you worth hiring? Any of those things when you're just so difficult. And then I start to think about how difficult the world is to me and why I have to be a difficult person in a difficult world, that no one else seems to have that struggle. And I think that's where a lot of the aloneness and isolation comes from without having a diagnosis. And so she talks, in fact, the word difficult is such an important part of my life. It is the first tattoo that I ever got is the word difficult on my back, because that's how much I identified with this piece. That's how much that word difficult, was really a part of my experience. So I thought it was a great piece. We all talked about it a lot. It was shared in multiple places again, but within our groups, definitely discussed, and so worth sharing to you guys. Next up is this piece that came out of Australia, out of the University of New South Wales in Sydney, why people with intellectual disability experience lower life expectancy. And what they were talking about in there, all the different reasons why there are barriers to healthcare for people with intellectual disability and what they are, and that ultimately it is all of our jobs to create better public health care, and that would help some of the issues that we have going on. Specifically, they were talking about facing the barriers of delayed diagnosis. So for any number of reasons, it may take people with intellectual disabilities quite some time to get themselves somewhere where they can get a diagnosis. And with something like cancer, a delayed diagnosis can make a lot of difference. And so that's some of the stuff that they were talking about in the article. I thought it was really interesting, as I know it's not just a factor for people with intellectual disability, but any of us that have a developmental disability. All right, last up, fun piece. I don't know anything about this show. I don't know anything about this actress, but I will share it with you. Why? Because we made it to the mainstream yet again, Newsies. Here we are, autistic Newsies. Whew, we made it. So in Variety of all places, Variety magazine, the entertainment world, the show Everything's Gonna Be Okay star, which is coming out. It apparently hasn't even come out yet. But that show is coming out, and the star discloses that she's on the spectrum. And she's youngish, in her teens, I'm guessing, by the picture. Her name is Kayla Cromer, and she is the star of that show. And it talks about her coming out about her autism spectrum disorder. Again, I love it. Why? We made it to the mainstream. Why? Somebody else who's doing something good and newsworthy is talking about it. And that means that the mainstream is having to read it, which helps us to normalize and lower the stigma. And off of my soapbox. So that's the end of news stories for this week, but we have a lot of events. I had a lot of events come up this week in the group. I guess with the new year, everybody wants to announce their new events. So I will share those with you. First, the Art of Autism is having a contest. It's their second annual Finding Your Inner Mozart contest. It is for North American artists ages 14 plus. It is, I know they do cash prizes. It's something like a total of $1,700 in cash prizes. And the theme for this year is music or synesthesia, and the categories are fine art or digital art. The deadline is the 20th of January, and I will link you guys to that if you're interested. Let's see. Next up is the Disability Intersectionality Summit, and that is going to be in October of 2020, so quite a ways away. So you can start saving if it's something that's of interest to you. It's going to be at Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts on the 18th and 19th of October in 2020 this year. And the keynotes have been announced. I just leaned for, I'm sorry you had to see the top of my head like that. The keynotes have been announced, so I'm going to put that link up for you guys in case you're interested in that. Next up is ASFAR, or the Australian Society for Autistic Research, in December of 2020, so almost a year from now, a little less than a year from now. They are going to be having ASFAR in Wellington, New Zealand. Ooh, pretty location, I'm jealous. And that is going to be December 10th and 11th of 2020. Again, a link will be provided. And last event to share with you guys is coming up the soonest. It's coming up in February of this year. AANE, which you know I did the keynote for AANE this past year. They do a neurodiverse couples conference every year in February. And this year, they are live streaming the conference. And they've brought in David and Kristen Finch, two of my favorite Colorado peoples. And I actually think they're an amazing couple, and they have really great energy together. And if you are in the Massachusetts area and you are part of a neurodiverse couple, I say please go catch them. I will give you the link for that. That's going to be on February 22nd of this year. And last up, a little blip for me in the radar this week. I did the January edition of Asking Spectrum Women, which is a monthly Q&A that I do for Spectrum Women magazine. And I answer the questions of my fellow Spectrum women that they send in. So the January edition of that is out, and I'm going to give you a link to that so you can catch that as well. And that's it. That's the news for this week, you guys. That's what I've got to deliver you this Friday, January 10th of 2020. And I'm going to go do something really exciting now. I'm going to go and save some barn cats. Yeah, so I got to get going before it snows, because it's starting to snow outside, and I've got to get going before it's too cold for me to go save these cats. And I think that if I can get them back to my house, I might have some new barn cats to share with you guys the next time that I do a video. But until then, you guys, have an amazing weekend. Do something amazing. Be amazing. And share your amazing with me in the comments. I would love to hear what you guys do. I'd love to hear what you're up to. If you're new to the channel, please take a moment to go ahead and subscribe below and hit the notifications bell, because even though I do this every Friday, I send them out at different times. So if you don't want to miss it, you're going to want to make sure that you get those notifications. Again, I am Becca Hector, and I am your host of Neurodiversity Newsstand, and I will see you guys next Friday with the next installment. Till then, be amazing. You guys rock. Say hi to me in the comments and give me a thumbs up. I'm still trying to beat my 9. Thank you guys. I'll see you next week. Bye.